Sooner fans, Longhorn Nation, welcome to episode 70 of the Bevo Podcast, the only podcast exclusively dedicated to covering the greatest rivalry in college football, the University of Oklahoma and the University of Texas. I'm here with my man, Kevin Miller. I am John Whitson. We have hit conference play, and we are ready to break down the games of Oklahoma versus Cincinnati and Texas versus Baylor. Before we start, Kevin, I've got my new State Fair hat on. I've got an Okie brand hat that I got from the State Fair. It was Senior Citizen Day at the State Fair.
Senior Citizen Day.
They got in free. So we took the kids out of school. It was Wednesday. It was probably the best day. They didn't have any soccer or anything tonight, so we didn't have to worry about them like eating bad and not being ready or anything. So we took them out of school around lunchtime, took them to the fair. Listen, there were so many like motorized scooters of old people driving around. But the funniest part was as the day got longer, they were all drinking. Like all these old people in these motorized scooters. Yeah. Had like their beers and their alcoholic beverages.
So they're getting after it.
They were getting crazy, dude. They were like starting to run into people and run into stuff. I was like, all right, 6:30 time.
Do you open yourself up to a DUI charge if you are drinking while
like
on a scooter? Like, how does that work on a motorized
I don't
scooter?
know. I kind of joked about it, but at the same time, I was kind of like, man, dude, they're gonna like run a kid over, and they will not care. First of all, old people don't care anyway, They'll hit a kid. It doesn't bother
it seems like the older you get, the less you care.
Yeah.
Right?
But,
the less of a, you give.
Old people at Fair Day, Senior Citizen Fair Day, in their scooters with their 24-ounce Modelo's, right? Because apparently that's the only beer we can drink in Oklahoma anymore is Modelo. It got a little hairy. I got my hat. Actually, I got two hats because it was buy two for a special deal. Got my hats. Got out of the fair. Had a good time.
Did you have a corn dog? Did you like little Fletcher's preview for the Cotton Bowl coming up here at the Texas State Fair?
I saved that for the State Fair of Texas. And I don't want to like jinx it by like eating one at the Oklahoma State Fair. But we did. I had a pork chop sandwich, which was really, really good.
Okay.
And then my wife really screwed this deal up. So they got poutine. Have you ever heard of poutine?
Yeah.
What is the dominant factor that turns French fries into poutine?
I imagine it's a gravy, right?
It's the gravy, okay? So she orders it. I go over here and order like some fancy Barbie watermelon lemonade drink. And then we meet back at the table and I'm like, oh, well, that just looks like French fries with cheese on it. And she was like, well, yeah, because, I told them to hold the gravy because there's wheat in it and I'm gluten-free.
Cheese fries.
So I had cheese fries and I'm like, she's like, aren't they good? I'm like, well, they're cheese fries. Like they're fine. But the whole idea of like suggesting that we get the poutine was because it comes with like, that's the whole deal. She's like, well,
right.
I'm,
guess you're going to have to order your own poutine next time. Lesson learned.
Yeah. Lesson learned. The pork chop sandwich though, fantastic. All right, dude, listen, I want to jump into recruiting talk right away. We had breaking news just as we came on to record. Danny Okoye, 4-star out of the Tulsa area, top 150 player, highest ranked player in the state of Oklahoma, commits to Oklahoma over your Texas Longhorns and Josh Heupel's Tennessee Volunteers. Did you guys really think there was a chance you got this guy?
At one point we did, but over the last few weeks, now all signs pointed to Oklahoma. He did visit in the summer. He seemed to have a really good time. The interesting thing is, right, he only took his mom only went to one visit with him, and that was to Norman. She never went to Tennessee. She never went to Texas. She never went to LSU. That was the only one. If mom goes, it's usually a sign there.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great pickup for you guys. I love the way he plays on film, and you can never have too many good edge guys.
It takes us to number 7 in the 247 rankings, which is the ones we refer to on this podcast. As of right now, defensive linemen, including edge rushers for Oklahoma, Danny Okoye, Jaden Jackson, Nigel Smith, Wyatt Gilmore, David Stone. Kevin, you've been saying for months now that this is about as good a class as Oklahoma could hope to expect. Is there anybody else that we can plan on getting that you're aware of?
I hope not. As far as big time defensive linemen, you got to save some for the rest of us, man.
Dude,
This is, I mean, I don't want to say this is like A&M's class from a few years ago, but it's not far from it as far as the defensive line, the quality. I mean, David Stone, man, and Nigel Smith alone are already two studs. Then you get a Okoye on the edge. I mean, man, it's a big time class, big time D-line class.
I guess the thing is, they're going to be true freshmen when we hit the SEC, but we're already seeing true freshmen play for Oklahoma right now with PJ Adebari and Peyton Bowen. I don't see any reason to expect, if these guys are as good as they say they are, that they won't see significant time on the field by the time we're playing SEC teams.
Correct. And that's the thing, what you want to build with the defensive line is a good rotation, right? You want to have your studs as starters, but you want to be able to keep them fresh and rotate guys in. And you want to see very little drop off to the next guys. And that's what you're building towards. And I think it'll happen sooner than later.
Texas, 17th overall. Anything hot on the recruiting trail?
Yeah,
that we need to know about?
Yeah, you do. There are a couple guys that they're in for, just basically waiting for them to commit. Brandon Baker, 5-star offensive tackle out of California, looking like he's going to pick Texas at some point. And then Kobe Black, he's a 5-star corner out of Waco. He's high on Texas. We expect him to pick Texas at some point. So with those two guys, man, also Ryan Wingo, 5-star receiver out of the St. Louis area. He was visiting last weekend. I don't know if you remember, his brother played for Arkansas. His name was Ronnie Wingo. And that's his younger brother, Ryan, 5-star receiver. Visited, brought the whole family down to Austin for the Wyoming game. They had a great time. I expect him to commit to Texas too. So that'll be 3 5-star commits coming up soon, hopefully.
Are y'all up against the usual suspects with these guys, or do you feel
basically
really good?
with Ryan Wingo? I think it's coming down to Texas and Missouri. Okay, which, yeah, you never know with the like Williams and everything.
Yep.
Which again, I still don't think that recruitment's over for you guys. But and with Kobe Black, LSU, Texas A&M is a biggest competition for him. And then with Baker, I think it's Oregon and Ohio State. It's the biggest competition for him.
Y'all have 3 5-stars. That's going to bounce y'all up out of the 17th spot pretty darn quickly, won't it?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
Yeah. I don't know what the calculator is, but that has to get you up into the top 10. Really fun fact for Oklahoma and Texas fans. If you get on 247 Sports and you go to the main page and then you want to look at recruiting rankings and you want to look at it by conference, you have to click on the SEC to see Oklahoma and Texas for the 20.
That is really interesting. So they just switch it out. It says, well, it kind of makes sense since when those kids sign, and those kids will never play in the Big 12. They'll be playing in the SEC. So now that actually makes sense.
It made me feel pretty good because this conference sucks. I'm so sick of it. Real quick, thanks to a shout out to the ref and Tyler McComas there always does these nuggets. I just want to point out that this is 48 years ago on this date. Number 1 Oklahoma played number 415 Pitt, 146-10. You know who the running back for Pitt was?
I do, but why don't you let our listeners know?
Tony Dorsett. I mean, this guy he's as good as they get. He won a Heisman Trophy. Great player for the Dallas Cowboys. We all love Tony Dorsett. Oklahoma's defense held him to 17 yards, Kevin. 17 yards.
Pretty remarkable, man, when you get a guy who is not just when he left college football as the NCAA's all-time leading rusher, and then of course went on to have a Hall of Fame career in the NFL.
The leading rusher in the game was Little Joe Washington with his silver shoes, who ran for 166 yards on only 23 carries. Listen, if people would have been able to watch the Oklahoma Sooners in 1974 and 1975, he would have won a Heisman. Archie Griffin would not have won 2 Heismans. Archie would have won the one he deserved, and the other one would have gone to Joe Washington. And there's little doubt in my mind that it has everything to do with nobody being able to see how good a player that guy was.
Makes sense, man. Makes sense.
Well, I mean, he was dynamic, Kevin. He did everything. I read some little thing about him. The only player on Monday Night Football catch a pass, throw a pass, and run a pass back and run a kickoff return for a touchdown. I mean, the guy was unbelievable. He should have won a Heisman. He didn't, but he should have. And I think It's the only reason Archie Griffin has 2. The only
And the
reason.
crazy thing is, at OU back then, you replace him, like he leaves, he goes to the NFL, then you get Billy Sims after that.
Oh, yeah.
What are we talking about here?
Yeah, and then not too long after that, it was Marcus Dupree, who was probably the best of the bunch. And we all know the story there, but I'll tell you what, it's fantastic. All right. That was a top 25 matchup. This week, week 4, college football, we have 4, Kevin, count them, 4 top 25 matchups. Big 12 play opens. There's a number of storylines. Last week, we were searching for storylines. Like, oh, what are we talking about? We ended up getting some really interesting results, but it wasn't the hype leading into the weekend that this is. Some questions that are going to be asked before we go through this. I'm going to just ask you some questions. You can answer, or just they can be rhetorical, up to you. First question I wrote down is, will Cam Rising play? They play who do they play? UCLA. That's a top 25 matchup. Will Cam Rising play against UCLA?
Man, I haven't heard anything yet about his health. I hope he does, but if you're Utah, you can't rush him out until he's ready, right? You can't risk him getting re-injured until you know for sure he's ready to go. But man, I would love to see him play against UCLA.
Kyle Whittingham has had him at practice this week, and he has been practicing, but he will not announce until game time whether he plays or not. I really hope he plays. I don't know why. I just like, of all the teams in the Pac-12, Utah's my favorite. My brother-in-law, Joe, the BYU fan, will hate me for saying that, but I just can't stand all the other teams. Next one. Does Deion Sanders have a chance in Autzen?
Absolutely. There's always a chance. Always a chance. With him, Shedeur Sanders, that offense, there's definitely a chance. I just want to see how they hold up in the trenches against Oregon.
I think this is the week that they come down to earth. But I think next week against a very weak USC defense could be a game where Shedeur Sanders and Caleb Williams have an absolute shootout.
Oh man,
so
I can't wait. Yeah,
I know I'm jumping ahead a week, but I just cannot wait for that. I kind of just think, Oregon's got some big boys that Colorado's not ready for yet. Can Milroe right the ship for Bama?
I think he absolutely can. I have no idea what happened last week. Saban was saying something about there was some kind of internal team deal and people need to react better when they don't get good news. So I don't know if he's meaning that Jalen Milroe was suspended last week, but I don't know. That offense looked horrible without him against South Florida. This guy can make plays. I know he had a couple turnovers. I think he can. That's teachable. He can correct that. He can correct those things. This is a young guy, his first season as a starter. Give him a chance. We've seen him make big plays. He made big plays against Texas, and I think he'll do it this week.
Do y'all need to see Bama roll Mississippi just for your psyche? Just to calm you down heading, 3 weeks out of the Red River rivalry? Listen, I'm not taking away – well, hold on. I'm not taking away a win from Bama. It's still Bama. It's still in Tuscaloosa. But if they go out and look bad against Mississippi and lose, does that give you pause as to what that win possibly meant?
A little bit. A little bit. I think they'll play well against Ole Miss. I think Saban will have them ready to go, and I just think Milroe is so dynamic. If they just take advantage of the things he's good at, I think they can light up Ole Miss's defense. I'm just curious to see how their defense plays against Ole Miss. But again, I told you, I'm a big Jalen Milroe guy. Was before the Texas game, and I was even more so after the game.
Last just thought-provoking question. Does Oklahoma State score more points than do they play more quarterbacks than they score points?
I don't think so, man.
Iowa State's defense is good, dude. Iowa State's defense is good.
They got to get more. I mean, surely Gundy can scheme up a way for them to get more than 3, right? I mean, but God, that offense against Alabama State, that whole performance was just perplexing. I have no idea what they were doing out there. Neither
South Alabama.
Yeah.
Don't knock them. All right. Let's jump into these games. Florida State at Clemson. Clemson is getting 2.5. I wonder when the last time Clemson got 2.5 at home.
Oh, I know. Because I can't think of a game they played. It was probably another Florida State team or maybe Louisville with Lamar Jackson, perhaps. But I don't know. They had Deshaun Watson then, so they probably were favored even then. So it's definitely a unique position for them.
And to think that was probably expected to be the game of the week at the beginning of the college football season, and it's now probably fallen to 5th or 6th on the list. SMU at TCU. So TCU, have they already started conference play? Is that how they're able to?
They did, yeah. They played against Houston last week. That's why they're technically top of the Big 12.
Okay, that makes sense. Auburn at A&M. A&M is the 7.5-point favorite. Everybody's raving about A&M's offense. Do they roll against War Eagle?
I don't know if they roll, but I do think they win the game. I told you I like their quarterback, Connor Wegman. I like their weapons. They should. As long as they have trust in him and open their offense up, I think they can be pretty explosive. I'm more concerned with that defense. That defense hasn't looked great, though.
Yeah, but I can't even think of Auburn's quarterback right now. Who's Auburn rolling out these days?
Yeah, I'm not sure who they're playing because obviously Bo Nix is gone, so they probably got a transfer in from somewhere. So I'll look it up. Go on.
Colorado at Oregon, -21. This is the rubber meeting the proverbial road. 21 is a lot of points. That's a lot of points regardless of what we think. I have a hard time seeing Oregon cover the 21, although I think they win and win convincingly in the sense that they look like the better team by the time the game's over.
Yeah,
but they're not covering 21.
I don't
right?
expect them. I don't expect them to cover 21 against Colorado. I just don't.
If Colorado beats them, I mean,
man,
Colorado, what, top 5? I mean, are we crazy?
I mean, I don't know if they're top 5 because they're not beating the top 5 team, but I think they might stick up in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, you're
which
probably
is crazy enough.
That was probably a big jump to say top 5, but at the same time, man, it's going to be a really good ranked team on the road. I mean, we know how. I mean, dude, listen, Oregon's a crappy place to play. Probably a great place to watch a game, but terrible to have to go play there.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to have to go there yourself.
One of the ranked teams we talked a little bit about it, Ole Miss versus Bama. Bama is a 7-point favorite. I think this is one Ole Miss can sneak in on, though. If not win it, I think they can cover the 7.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is going to come down to I want to see how that Bama defense plays against Jackson Dart. This offense is explosive, man. Talked about Quinshon Judkins, and this is a very, very explosive Ole Miss offense. Can Alabama keep up, really? I'm picking Alabama, though.
I loved Judkins last year, and I still like him. And I'd like to see if he can run on Bama and give Jackson Dart some time to get into the play action game. UCLA at Utah, I think it all hinges on if Cam Rising plays or if he doesn't. Even then, coming in as his first game of the season, is he going to be ready to go against UCLA? I think it's a huge advantage for Utah to be at home in this game, which might be another reason they roll him out, because he's at home, doesn't have to worry about the crowd noise, can kind of ease into it. That is a huge game in the Pac-12. We keep talking about how loaded the Pac-12 is. This is the first meeting of those kind of power teams that we've been talking about.
Correct. I want to see, how Dante Moore plays. He got this true freshman quarterback, 5-star out of Detroit, who plays for UCLA. His name was Dante Moore. I want to see how he looks on the road in that environment because, Utah's going to show up.
BYU in their first ever Big 12 game going to Kansas. Kansas is an 8.5-point favorite coming off the heels of BYU going to Arkansas and beating Arkansas. Again, can BYU do it 2 weeks in a row and upset a home favorite?
I'm curious to see how they defend because it was a bit of a shootout, right? Against Arkansas. It was 38-31, something like that.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. I like what I saw from BYU, but this Kansas offense is totally different. It's a totally different animal from what Arkansas brings. And I know BYU is a very physical team. They always are. But this offense, man, I don't know. Right now, I think I'm rolling with Kansas.
The over-under is only 54.5. It's not a crazy over-under.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I think I'd take the over in that game if I was a true gambling person. You know what I mean? Because I don't know that either one of them have none of them are the 85 Bears there. Tech at West Virginia. West Virginia's a 6-point favorite. Or no, getting six at home. OSU, we talked about this game. Oklahoma State at Iowa State. The real number on this game is the over-under. Speaking of over and unders, 36.5. Are you freaking
Wow.
kidding me? Is that the worst over-under you've ever heard in your life?
It's pretty bad. It's like the old SEC games you would see in the 2000s. Remember that when Mississippi State and Auburn played, the final score was like 3-2?
It could be that bad.
This might be.
It could be that bad.
Yeah. Problem is, though, I don't know. Oklahoma State was getting torched. I know Iowa State's offense is nothing great, but I was really concerned with what I saw defensively from Oklahoma State last week.
From what I've read this week, South Alabama's team would be favored against Iowa State for whatever that means. Whether that means I think they're just at this point, better equipped to compete than an Iowa State is. But I still can't get over the 36.5. I mean, they have to score more than that. That's like, what's the score? That's like
in this conference, that kind of offensive numbers.
That's a 21-16 game. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Arkansas at LSU. LSU is 17.5-point favorite. Here's another top 25 matchup. Oregon State at Washington State. The battle of the left outs. Any thoughts on that game?
I like what I've seen from DJ Uiagalelei so far. You said this is at Washington State, right?
I've got it at Washington State, and Washington State's a 3-point favorite.
How he does on the road. Washington State does have an underrated home environment, so I'm curious to see how they go on the road. I like Oregon State. I liked them before the season. I think they've been really good so far. So, yeah, I want to see how he plays in a tough environment.
You got UCF at K-State. K-State's a 5-point favorite. See if they can rebound from their loss at Missouri. Caleb Williams and the coach that seems to want to ban everybody from his program is at ASU, where they are 35-point favorite. Do you hear that story?
No.
He banned a reporter. Lincoln Riley banned a reporter or suspended a reporter for 2 weeks from press availabilities, because while at a press availability, let me be very specific because the details matter here. He's at a press availability. 2 players are not on the podium yet, but they're beside talking to each other, and he overhears it and quotes it, and it's a very it's not unflattering. It's not even really a big deal. It's like, oh, I heard them talking and they said that they were really focused on this or that, right? And Lincoln Riley suspended the guy.
Yeah, he's always seemed to have a very interesting relationship with the media, right? I've heard things here.
Yeah. You know what his relationship is? He's a narcissistic baby. That's what his relationship is, Kevin. He wants to control everything.
Here we go.
He wants to control. Look, I wasn't even going to go on a rant about Lincoln Riley. I didn't want it to turn into that. But the guy drives me absolutely up a wall. And where does he do getting off suspending a guy for 2 weeks?
Yeah, it sounds like this could have been just a basic misunderstanding, right? I mean, just say, hey, man, listen, don't quote the guys in a personal conversation.
Don't quote the guys in a personal conversation and focus on your defense. Don't worry about the freaking. This guy didn't reveal plays or something crazy like that. It was if you read the article, it was nothing. It was a nothing burger. It was crazy. He's a weirdo, dude.
Do they cover though?
Yeah, they cover. Arizona State's terrible.
Yeah,
so
they absolutely.
Cal at Washington. Michael Penix Jr. is going to put up some more stats, I think, and continue his run.
And their receiving core, man, it's I brag about Texas receiving core. These guys, and we saw them in the Alamo Bowl firsthand. That is a really, really good group of receivers that they have. They're going to put up numbers against pretty much anybody all season.
Are the top 3 Heisman contenders as of right now all in the Pac-12?
Who's third?
Shadir.
Well, then who's second?
Caleb Williams.
Who's first?
Michael Penix Jr. Well, I mean, I don't know what order. I don't know what order.
Okay.
I don't know what order.
I didn't think of Penix for some reason. I knew about Shadur and then Caleb, but no, I mean,
we were talking about. You understand? We were talking about Washington, Kevin. I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we're also talking about the Pac-12. So I don't know, man. I'm a big fan of his. I've been a big fan of his.
Yeah, I know. He's your boy. That's another reason I can't believe you didn't. You left him
Drake
off the
May
list.
out of North Carolina is pretty good, but I don't know if he's a legitimate Heisman guy. So yeah, I think you can make a reasonable argument that all three of those guys are the top 3 Heisman guys. Absolutely.
I think they might be. The kid at Ohio State who we're about to talk about, but he's, he hadn't even started every game, right?
Oh, McCord, the quarterback. Yeah, I think that was his first start.
Yeah, so he's off the list. Maybe if the kid from Notre Dame, Hartman comes out and has a great game against Ohio State, maybe he.
Yeah, they'll have to beat Ohio State and then pretty much go undefeated, only have 1 loss. You have to show up and have a big game against USC whenever they play.
No, absolutely. So, but right now, I don't know who else it is. Oklahoma fan would love to throw out Dylan Gabriel, and the stats are maybe there, but just the resume in terms of who we beat.
It's still early. Yeah. If the season goes how you guys hope, then he'll definitely be in New York.
Quinn's not there. The stats aren't there.
No. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention him at all. No, he'll have to. Here's the thing, right? If Texas goes on this run to where they only have 1 loss or they're somehow undefeated towards that time of the year, then yes, he will. He will, just because he's a quarterback of an undefeated Texas team, whether if he deserves it or not. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. Well, and he can point to that. He's had the moment already beating Bama and Tuscaloosa. He's had the moment.
Right, yeah,
the Heisman moment was there.
Texas beats OU and, they make a deep run undefeated in the conference. He'll be in New York. He will.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Hey, dude, you got it. Well, so anyway, and then I'm sorry, I buried the lead. The biggest game of the weekend, Ohio State at Notre Dame. I'm looking at Ohio State on ESPN, 66% win probability. They're going with Kyle McCord at quarterback. Maybe the best receiver in college football right now with Marvin Harrison Jr. Is that fair to say?
He's dynamic. Absolutely.
And then Notre Dame, number 9, rolling out Sam Hartman, of course, getting to play this game at home. We're definitely picking this game. Notre Dame is getting 3 points. They are a 3-point dog at home to the Ohio State. What are your thoughts on this one?
I just want to see. I got concerns about the Notre Dame offense, right? I think they're up and down. The scheme is a little weird. I think they're better with Hartman than they were with the guy they had last year, Buckner, who's now at Alabama. He looked horrible against South Florida last week. I just don't know if they can keep up with Ohio State. I do like the defense for Notre Dame. I think they'll be able to slow down Ohio State's offense a bit. I just don't know if they can score enough to keep up. I like what Jim Knowles has been doing. Remember, former Oklahoma State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles became the Ohio State defensive coordinator last year. Did a pretty good job last year. They were up and down. They got torched by Michigan. But so far this season, they look really good. They look really good. So, man, I just don't know if Notre Dame can score enough to keep up.
I think Ohio State is probably still the better team, but I think Notre Dame has the better quarterback. And I think they're
definitely the more experienced quarterback too.
That's what I mean. Maybe not, at the end of their careers or whatever, but like right now when they play on Saturday, I think Notre Dame has the better quarterback. I think that this sets up really well for Notre Dame. It's not the same story as like Alabama, Texas, where, it's a revenge type game, but it can feel that way, but it is kind of, it's not a home and away.
Yeah, they played.
They played last year, and they played with them for about 3 quarters before Ohio State kind of pulled away. So they know they can play with these guys. They know they didn't get run off the field, and anybody that committed to play at Notre Dame thinks that they're a pretty good football player. So they're not scared of playing anybody. This is right there on the list. They've got a good quarterback. It's 3-point. It's a 3-point favorite. 3-point underdog for Notre Dame. I'm taking Notre Dame to win the game outright.
Man, I don't like agreeing with you. I really don't.
What? You just broke down Jim Knowles' whole defense. You said there's no way Jim Knowles isn't going to shut down Sam Hartman. That's what I just heard.
Man, listen. I think they're going to force McCord to make a few bad plays, a couple of turnovers. I think they capitalize off those. Go Irish. Notre Dame.
Go Irish. All right, I got it down. All right, dude, we got 2 more to pick. Let me just refresh the top 25 ones. Ole Miss, Bama, UCLA, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State. I do not want to pick that game. For some reason, I don't even care about that game. Also of interest, BYU and Kansas and Florida State, Clemson. I'll let you pick the next one.
Oh man, let's do. Are we doing Colorado, Oregon?
It's a 21-point line. I mean, if you want to, if you're willing to jump on that line, I'll let you choose it. Yeah.
Man, yeah, I'm going. I'm going Oregon to win the game, but I got Colorado covering that spread. Man, I think it's too high.
Dude, I'm not following to follow the leader. I agree with you. I don't know. Here's my only question about that line, and I'm going to go with Colorado covering, but I'm going to put like a comma or just maybe like a placeholder for when we talk about this on Sunday morning. Is Vegas must know something because people have to be unloading on that line, right? I mean,
You would think so. You would think so. Yeah, I mean, again, the difference in the trenches could just be that much to where Colorado just can't physically keep up, right? Because that's the weakness of Colorado so far. Their offensive line isn't elite, right? And they are going up against Dan Lanning, who is a defensive genius, right? This guy knows what he's doing when it comes to coordinating defenses. So
yeah.
that could be the difference. If they cover, that's why. Because we look around and they just cannot block or protect.
You think people are off of Notre Dame? I mean, not off of Notre Dame, off of Colorado just because Travis Hunter's out too?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, he was out pretty early in that game and they were still able to come back. And I know it's Colorado State, right? They're not rolling out the type of athletes that Oregon is, right? But I'm not out because of Travis Hunter. I mean, it changes a little bit because I think he's the most talented player. I mean, he's definitely the most talented player on that football team, but I'm not out completely. I like the mental makeup of that Colorado team.
We got one more to pick before we pick our two games. I don't want to pick. I would not bet the Utah UCLA game because I don't know if Cam Rising's playing. So I'm staying away from that game. And I want to pick Bama and Ole Miss. Yeah. Bama's a 7-point favorite. Ole Miss covers the 7. Ole Miss covers the 7. I'm not prepared to pick them as an outright winner, but I think they're inside the touchdown.
Okay. I'm going the other way. I think Alabama wins. I think Alabama covers. I think it's going to be in Tuscaloosa, right? The crowd's going to be insane. And I think Jalen Milroe is going to have a really good game. I think he's going to be anxious to show everybody why he's always should have been the starting quarterback. He never should have been benched. I think he goes nuts running the football and makes a couple big plays in the passing game. I think Alabama wins and covers.
We will pick the Oklahoma game and the Texas game as we do our previews. Before we transition to covering the University of Texas versus Baylor, let's thank our sponsor, Brown O'Haver. Brown O'Haver is a public insurance adjusting firm. They work for the insured, not the insurance company. Kevin works for Brown O'Haver. I work for Brown O'Haver. If you've suffered a loss to your home, your business, by wind, fire, theft, vandalism, any type of insurable loss, give us a call, 405-735-5510, licensed in Oklahoma, licensed in Texas, 17 other states. We can help you nationwide, and we can do commercial, residential, whatever the case may be. But give us a call. We typically get our clients 30 to 40% more on their own. And even more importantly, we get the money in their pocket faster to allow them to rebuild and get back on their feet. Give Brown O'Haver a call, 405-735-5510. Kevin, we're going to start with the Baylor Bears and the Texas Longhorns. Before we jump into that, a question about Texas. There's a statistic floating around Twitter this week that has to do with offensive and defensive success rate. Now, I tried to look this up. I'm thinking it has to do with conversions on 3rd and 4th down, and potentially maybe even scoring conversions. Like there's some kind of analytic, and I haven't been able to find the details out about it yet. But long story short, it lists y'all defensively as first in success rate and offensively as last in the country in success rate. Does that jive with what you've seen through 3 games?
Well, a little bit, right? We've seen them be up and down offensively. We've seen down against Rice, at least in the first half. We've seen all the way up against Alabama, and then we've seen kind of down again against Wyoming. I don't know all the details of the stat, so I'm not sure exactly what they're getting at here. So for it to be last in the country, it's got to be pretty bad. So I'm curious to know exactly what that means and how it works. But they've been very up and down so far this year, and I'm hoping they can get a little bit more consistent.
We had talked about it before the show that potentially it was on 3rd and 4th down conversions. You seem to think though that could jive with that, or at
Yeah,
least
absolutely.
the eye test is telling you they're not very good right now on third and fourth down.
Yeah, they really struggle on third downs, especially at third and long. So the problem is if they don't execute, especially on first down, if you get them into second and then third and long, then yeah, they really, really struggle. Then you can rush three and drop eight, clog up the passing lane that Quinn likes to hit. And yeah, it keeps Texas off balance for sure. That's why it was so important for them, especially against Alabama. You saw them hit a lot of their big plays on first down.
I mean, I guess that's the story of Quinn Ewers, right? Is when things are on schedule, when he's getting the protection he's looking for, when he's getting the look from the defense that he wants, he's as good as almost anybody in the country in terms of throwing the ball to the open receiver. But the minute it breaks down or gets off schedule, just like you talked about, if first and 10 then turns into second and 12, it kind of messes his rhythm up and he has a hard time adjusting. What do you
Correct.
attribute that to?
I don't know. He's really
Year.
streaky, man. Yeah, he's second year as a starter, right? I think he's played in 13 games so far. Not a ton, but enough to where you would think you'd have a little bit more consistency, right? Now, I'm still a believer, right? Until I say otherwise, I am still completely in on Quinn. But man, I hope he just develops a little bit of consistency. I don't understand why he is so streaky. Because when he's good, like you said, man, when you see him at his best, it's like, okay, you see why this guy could be talked about as being a first round draft pick. But man, when he's down, it's just like he looks like someone who's never really played football before, who has no idea what he's doing out there.
I don't even really know who to compare him to. Like, it's always easy to sometimes pick players to compare other players to. But like when I think about, they talk about good Bo, bad Bo, Nix at who's now at Oregon. That moniker followed him around all through his career at Auburn. But I never saw the arm talent from Bo Nix that you see from Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing about Quinn. Like, he doesn't turn the football over a ton, right? Especially like this season, he has no turnovers. So even when he's bad, he's not putting you in positions to where you're going to lose a game. He hasn't made any throws to where I'm like, ooh. I don't think he's had even one interceptable pass all season. But it's just sometimes he just misses guys. And we talked about his inconsistency with his mechanics. Sometimes he drifts back into old habits, which are bad habits, with throwing off his back foot and just not being set, not having his feet set when he throws. So, like I said, we're just hoping with more experience, the consistency comes, because right now he's just way too up and down.
Will he be consistent this week against Baylor? What kind of threat does Baylor pose to the Texas offense? And are they good enough to slow down Texas at all?
Well, the biggest thing about Baylor is Dave Aranda does a really good job of scheming up a defense to play against Texas, right? Since Sark has been there, they've struggled both years against Baylor. The first year, they started off making some big plays, but then, the kind of second half woes that we saw from Texas the last two seasons came in, especially in 2021. Last year, I mean, they just had Quinn just completely flummoxed. He had no idea what he was doing out there. They sacked him 5 times. It got to the point to where they just ran the ball, I think 20 plus straight plays with Bijan and Roshan Johnson because they couldn't get anything going. So far this year, though, I do not like what I've seen out of Baylor's offense. They got beat down by Texas State. I'm talking about defensively. Like, Texas State did whatever they wanted to offensively, right? Utah made some plays against them. And then they didn't look really good against Long Island University.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. With Baylor, this is not your typical Dave Aranda team. It's so interesting with them, right? Because when he got them going, remember that year they went into the Sugar Bowl? They had a great season with him. And then ever since then, they've almost fallen off. They were 6-7 last year. And then this year, they're off to a 1-2 start. So I don't know exactly what's going on with them, but I don't like what I've seen from them at all this season.
So when I think about Baylor, I think about I think about teams that don't do well in the transfer portal, right? And he is not.
Yeah.
He hasn't done well in the transfer portal over the last 2 years, and I acknowledge that there are coaches that don't want to build programs through the transfer portal. I get that. That's fine. But you're starting to see a trend, and I think you're seeing it at Oklahoma State. think you're seeing it at Baylor. And then from a power conference, or from a power perspective, like a team that's been a traditional power over the last 12 years, you're seeing it at Clemson, where they're not playing. They want to refer to it as the transfer portal game, right? They're not playing the transfer portal game, but it's resulting in net losses at key positions that other teams are stacking on to that. So you look at Texas, for example, to add an AD Mitchell in the portal is huge.
Yeah.
It's ginormous. It adds a whole nother dimension to your team where okay, maybe you can shade Whittington and shade Worthy. Well, now you can't shade AD Mitchell. So you have to play people straight up. Was Texas okay at wide receiver last year? Well, sure they were. Y'all were very, very solid at wide receiver. But Sark sat back and said, let's go get even better. Not just be happy with where we're at. Not try to develop a true freshman. This kid's on the market. Let's go get after him. We're seeing the transfer portal come into play at Oklahoma in a very positive manner.
Yeah, I mean, where would you guys have been without getting Dylan Gabriel from the transfer portal last year?
Dude,
who would you have played at quarterback last year?
Every one of our quarterbacks is transfer portal guys.
Right.
Every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield was a transfer. Kyler Murray was a transfer. Jalen Hurts was a transfer. Caleb Williams ended up being a transfer. I mean, everybody's been a transfer. And I think Oklahoma, look, we're ranked 7th in recruiting. We're not recruiting the high school, the high school ranks, but we understand, and I think Texas does too, that the transfer portal is not going anywhere, and they're using it to their advantage, and not just sitting back being pissed off about it.
Correct. And look, Colorado has shown us all. They have 80 new players, and this team looks like they've been practicing together for years. You can build a team quickly from the transfer portal. And again, like you said, they're not looking to build a whole roster, but you can replace guys. They're in a really bad quarterback spot right now.
Really bad.
Right? They had Blake Shapen, right? He's hurt. And then they've got Sawyer Robertson, who is a transfer, right? But Shapen got hurt. And it's like you could have added a quarterback in the transfer portal this year. They had a kid named Austin Novosad, one of the top quarterbacks in the country last year, who was committed to Baylor throughout the entire process. And signing day comes and he flips and signs with Oregon. But again, they could have signed somebody out of the portal, right?
Yeah.
He could have gotten somebody. So now Shapen's banged up. Sawyer Robinson looks horrible so far. And now they're stuck with really no quarterback.
Well, and you look at like a Mississippi, right, who we talked about going up against Alabama. And this is just one more example of the portal. And then we can move on to the game. But they go get Spencer Sanders, and he's on the bench. You're telling me Baylor couldn't have got Spencer Sanders?
Exactly. And then they got, even Jackson Dart the transfer.
That's
USC. Yeah. So
anyway, I think that's what's impacting teams like Baylor is, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not that they don't want to embrace it. They're just not very good at it. I don't know. Maybe that's the uniqueness of the transfer portal is really, really good players want to win now. And so they're more willing to go to Oklahoma or Texas or Georgia or Bama, as transfers. So I guess that's part of it, but that still doesn't exempt the players that want to play right away.
Not at all. And they're guys who are coming from lower group of 5 conferences, perhaps, who would love to play in the Big 12 at a school like Baylor and play for a coach like Dave Aranda. If you're say you're a linebacker or a safety, right? And you play at a smaller school, you want to step up, and you play for Coach Aranda, right? He developed his players. Another question we have to ask, right, is how good is he at building his own roster? Because remember, he got there. He won with Dave Aranda's players.
Yeah.
With Matt Rule's players.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Matt Rule's players, right? So does he struggle at building a roster? It's something that as a first-time head coach, you've never really had to do before.
Well, I think the answer is yes. I think he does struggle at it. And because, last year wasn't great.
6-7. And
this year is not getting off to a good start. It's just not. And I mean, they are two. Well, no, they're 1-2, right?
1-2. Yeah. They lost to Texas State. They lost to Utah, which is, you expect them to lose to Utah. Yeah. Although, again, with their backup quarterback, who I don't think is very good, honestly. They've got I just don't. And then you beat Long Island University, and that game was closed for a while. Long Island University? What are we talking about?
The line for Texas is plus 15 for Baylor. Baylor's getting 15 points. The over-under is 51.5, so they're not expecting a lot of points, at least on the Baylor side. Are you taking Texas to cover the 15?
I am, man. For me, Texas, the toughest thing for Texas is Texas. They got to get out of their own way. The only thing stopping them from being the team that I think they can be this year. So wake up, go out, handle business, beat down Baylor. It's a conference opponent. Last time we'll probably be playing them for God knows how long, right? Go to Waco, handle your business, get a win, blow these boys out of the water.
I am torn on this one, and honestly I'm going to be torn when we pick the OU game too, because I don't know why I don't feel too comfortable about that line. I think OU will win. I think Texas wins tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but on Saturday. I just I can't unsee. It's the same reason why I picked Bama to cover. Was I can't unsee Quinn's Wyoming performance. Right, he just didn't look good, and he didn't look good against Rice. So if you get that performance from Quinn, you're not going to cover. Like, you'll win. To your point, he's not going to lose the game for you, but he's not going to go blow the doors off of him. But if you get it's like you get the Quinn from Bama, and you're going to win by 3 touchdowns. So,
right.
It's the Boomer Bevo podcast. I hate Texas. Texas does not cover. Baylor covers. Texas wins. Baylor covers. University of Oklahoma is going up against the University of Cincinnati. They're quarterbacked by Emory Jones. Speaking of transfer portal players, this is Emory Jones's 6th college season. I guess this is the last year for all these COVID kids, or will there still be another couple?
I would be surprised if he plays another year.
No, not him necessarily, but just this phenomenon.
Yeah, I think all these guys. Players. I mean, I don't see a scenario unless you get a medical hardship that you can play a 7th year of college football.
He actually went up.
Would you want to?
Well, I don't know. They probably would. Why not? Yeah, I don't know. It seems weird to me. He actually went up against Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl in 2020. Is that the Cotton Bowl? And did okay, whatever. We rolled them, so that wasn't a big deal. Their coach is Scott Satterfield. He was Appalachian State coach for about 5 years, 51-24 record there. Losing record not a losing record, 25-24 at Louisville over 3 years. So not necessarily a losing record, but just a pretty mediocre record.
Yeah, correct.
So he's at Cincinnati now. They've got a pretty good running back with Corey Kiner, averaging 6.1 yards a carry. Nice receiver. Xavier Henderson has 20 catches.
He's a transfer from Florida also.
Oh, is he? Okay, yeah. So the problem with this entire game is that they're coming off a freaking loss to Miami of Ohio. If they would have taken care of business against Miami of Ohio, this would have been a much easier game to get fired up for, I think, as an Oklahoma player.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what this environment is like. Remember, this is their first ever Big 12 conference game for the University of Cincinnati. So I expect a fired up crowd at that stadium.
Yeah, and you know what, dude? The 11 a.m. kickoff isn't 11 a.m. for them. They got a whole nother hour to drink. It's a 12.
Yeah,
it's a 12 noon kickoff. Yeah.
And think about this though, right? If you're coming up from what conference were they in last year? The American or whatever conference they were in, right? Doesn't matter. To join a conference like the Big 12, you get into the Power 5, and your first conference game is the University of Oklahoma coming to your stadium.
Yeah,
they're ready, man. The fans are going to be ready. Now, if the team is going to be ready, that remains to be seen. But those fans are going to be fired up. It should be a fun atmosphere.
Well, I mean, the last time we played them was 2012.
You guys beat them down, didn't you?
No, we didn't. No, it was a Landry Jones team, and we did not beat them down. I think their score was like 29-24.
I see. Was that in Norman or was it up there?
No, that was the one that was in Cincinnati. Now, the one in Norman, we did beat them. We did beat them up.
That's what I remember. Okay.
But the one in Cincinnati was like, so my point, to your point, I think the atmosphere is going to play a lot to it. This is really our first true road game of the year. Oklahoma went up to Tulsa, but it was like 75, almost 80% OU
Yeah,
fans.
you had that crowd. You had that stadium.
Yeah. And the biggest issue for Oklahoma right now, for me, is just identifying what the heck's going on in the running game. The leading rusher for the year is still Taway Walker after 3 games. He did not get a rush attempt against Tulsa. And nobody's saying why.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? What the rotation looks like. And I know Venables and Levy really want to get that running game going. One thing I'm curious to see with this game too is just how you guys handle the environment, right? First road game, like you said, first actual true road game. Can you minimize false starts? No pre-snap penalties on offense.
Yeah.
Right? Can you communicate your hand signals and things if it gets that loud to where you have to do a silent count? Right? I think that's one thing. Again, I'm comparing it to Texas because that's the only road game they played was against Alabama. But in that environment, they had no pre-snap penalties, right? Can we see something like that similar from OU?
And you have to think with Gabriel at quarterback, he's going to be very comfortable in these situations. Again, he's also a 6th-year quarterback, so he's seen these environments before. Heck, he's played at Cincinnati before, played on the road, last year playing on the road. I just don't think the moment's going to be too big for him. So I don't think it's an issue at quarterback, but you're right, for the younger offensive linemen who really still haven't gelled yet. We've talked about that, especially in the running game. They haven't gelled yet. Teddy Lehman on our previous episode mentioned the quarterback run game. I think that's one way to really settle down and kind of build some holes up to run the ball more traditionally. So I just get frustrated when that's the answer to the run game, though, is run the quarterback more. When I'm looking at these – go ahead.
Yeah, you see the offensive line talent, and then you see the talent at running back.
And you're like, why can't I just
go at them?
Yeah, why can't we just run the ball? Like what? Great, I appreciate that, and I understand the strategic nature of running the quarterback. But why should we have to run the quarterback, especially against a team like even Cincinnati? Why can't we line up? Now, that being said, Cincinnati is ranked pretty high. 8th and
I think they're top 10 in rushing yards so far. 239 yards a game so far.
Well, that's all on the offensive side of the ball. I was thinking that was defense. You're right. On the offensive side of the ball.
Cincinnati's run defense is good. I mean, their defensive line, Teddy Lehman talked about it on the last episode of the Bevo Podcast, how good their defensive line is. That's a great matchup to watch. That's one I'll be definitely keying in on.
Well, and that's the thing. So, are we going to see Taway Walker? He's even without playing a game, Kevin, he still has 40 more yards rushing than Walker. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry, than Barnes. Walker's averaging 5.6 yards a carry. Barnes at 4.4. Major at 4.1. Sawchuk way down on the list at 2.6 yards a carry. Taway Walker still has the most rushing touchdowns at 2 touchdowns. So will we see him? Is he our guy? Or are they going to start feeding the ball to Barnes and Sawchuk some more? I have no idea. I couldn't even begin to tell you what they're thinking at this point.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? To see what the game plan is, how they attack this Cincinnati defense. Is this defensive line as good as we've been told, right? Or is it that they haven't gone up against offensive linemen of the caliber that you guys have?
Yeah.
So it's a very, very interesting matchup.
Fox crew of Gus, Joel, and Jenny Taft for the 11 a.m. kickoff.
Awesome, man. We gotta enjoy this because we're gonna be getting them next year.
That's exactly
now.
What
We may get them in a non-con, perhaps. But it depends on who we're playing.
This is exactly what I was about to say. Is these are the good old days.
Correct.
Enjoy these days.
Yeah.
Because you don't get Gus, Joel, and Jenny in the SEC, unfortunately.
Correct. Now, Texas may get them. Texas does play at Ann Arbor next year. I don't know who has the rights to that game. If it's Fox, then clearly it'll be at 11 a.m. next season. But I don't know. That could be a night game. We'll see.
Oh,
but,
my gosh.
Yeah.
All right.
Enjoy it, man.
Oklahoma, 14.5-point favorite. Over-under is 57.5. So if you think this game's going to be a little higher scoring than the Texas game, Oklahoma covers the 14.5. What say you?
Man, I've gone back and forth on this, right? Because this is a game where I think that their defensive line can slow the game up a little bit and get pressure on Gabriel that'll, force a few quick drives and quick 3-and-outs. I think, first of all, you guys win the game, and I think it won't really be in doubt. But I think I'm going to pick Cincinnati to cover. I may regret this, but I think with their offense, they may make a few plays against the OU defense that just because, now look, SMU offense was pretty good too, and I thought you guys did a pretty good job of showing Preston Stone some looks that he was not ready for or not expecting. And you could do the same for Emory Jones, who I really like. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, but in my opinion, he's never really looked like a 5-star in college, whether he was at Florida or Arizona State. So I think he is a guy that you can force into making mistakes, but I do want to see how you handle him running the football. But I think they'll slow the game up, so I think they cover, but you guys win. I still think it'll never be in doubt.
Defensive injury update real quick. Justin Harrington still in doubt. Doubtful that he's going to play. Dason McCullough looks like he is back on the available list. So
the question I have for you guys with that is, do you start McCullough or are you comfortable with Peyton Bowen being the cheetah?
I think you figure out.
Rotate them?
I think you have to figure out a way to get them both on the field. Absolutely. I mean, Peyton Bowen is a highlight waiting to happen. I mean, pass breakup, pump block, all the stuff that kid does. But McCullough is the more polished player. So it's a great problem to have. And the way that they've been playing him this year is we're going to see them both. I don't know who starts out there, but I don't know that it matters because I think we're going to see them both throughout the game.
What I've been noticing, and so I wanted to touch on this before we wrap up here, is I saw a lot of PJ Adebawore last week against Tulsa. And I think that's really good for Oklahoma's defense. Every so often, right, you watch college football and you will just see a guy and you're like, who's that guy? He just looks different. Yeah. I'm not saying he's this type of player. Remember when you saw Julius Peppers on the field for North Carolina?
Yeah.
He just looked different.
Yeah.
I get that, or Javon Curtis when he played for Florida, when Bob Stoops was the defensive coordinator of Florida. That's the kind of feeling I get when I see PJ Adebawore. I mean, this dude is straight out of central casting for the edge position. Oh, right. I mean, this dude looks like he can almost touch his ankles from a standing position. How do you get that type of length, man? This dude is explosive, and I think before the season ends, this guy's going to be a star. He's going to be a household name. So hopefully the switch for him doesn't turn on until after the Red River Shootout. He's going to be a really good player.
I think they're just going to keep giving him more and more snaps. The one player on the defensive line was that we have, or at edge or defensive line that we haven't really seen the production that we expected is Bothroyd, right? Bothroyd hasn't given us what we thought we would get from him necessarily. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Coe has been really good, stopping stuff up the middle. And then, of course, seeing Adebawore on the edge looks really, really good right now. Our linebackers are in great shape. I'm happy with the defense. This is the next iteration in terms of a test. All right, real quick before we do leave, I need a fantasy update for all you Texas fans that have Bijan Robinson on your team. I know you do, Kevin. How's Bijan doing in fantasy? How's he doing in the league? I saw he had a monster game on Monday night.
Yeah, man, he's really good. He looks even better than I thought he would. He's second so far in the league in rushing, behind. I guess McCaffrey he's behind, but yeah, he's the NFL's second leading rusher so far. I think he may lead our running backs in receiving yards so far. So yeah, he is as good as advertised, perhaps even better. And every week so far, it's only been 2 games, but he makes a play that he's shaking NFL defenders out of their shoes and good players. And it's not like he's just shaking, defensive ends and linebackers. No, he's juking corners and safeties. He's just making them look silly out there. So, man, I'm excited to see what he can be. And I hope he stays healthy, man, because I think he's going to be the best running back in the NFL sooner than later.
Is he getting you the fantasy points you want? Because he hasn't scored any touchdowns yet.
That's the thing. He's getting good fantasy points, but not as many as he can, because he's still averaging over 20 points in fantasy a week. But once he starts getting into the end zone, man, he's gonna be a guy that's gonna be the top pick in fantasy for years to come if he can stay healthy, because he gives it to you running the ball and in the passing game.
Sooners have been doing really well this year in the NFL. Baker off to a 2-0 start, which I don't even think I predicted that they would be off to a 2-0 start.
Nobody did, man.
Yeah,
No
I
way.
don't. But I'll tell you what, man. If he keeps feeding the ball to Mike Evans, they can keep having success offensively, right? Mike Evans is such an underrated receiver.
Well, let me tell you about him, man. This guy, I think he heard people saying, "Hey, he might be washed," because he's playing with a level of intensity that honestly I haven't seen from him in the last few years. So he's a man on a mission this year, and it's nice to see. And yeah, Baker, give him the ball and just get out of the way. Just get the ball to him as often as you can.
Do you think he just got real comfortable with Tom Brady being there?
Maybe so. But last year he's been banged up. The guy's been in the league for a long time. He's played a lot of football at a high level. So I think he's just really motivated this year because people were saying he may be done. Should we even pay him? You know what I mean? I know he wanted a contract. They didn't really want to give it to him. So I think he's just really wanting to show people, what he can do.
The NFC South is just not any good. And
every year, man, it's just you never know who's going to win that thing.
You don't. Every year. So you've got what are the Falcons are 2-0, right?
Falcons are 2-0. That's right.
So the Falcons are 2-0. The Buccaneers are 2-0. So maybe they're better than we think. But God, it's hard to believe, right? Like I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Not yet, no. But here's the thing, though. You don't have to be great. You just got to be better than the other teams in that conference.
Yeah.
Because listen. I'm not a huge Baker fan, and I'm not talking about just his personality, just as a starting quarterback in the NFL. But I mean, you got Derek Carr, right? You never know what you're going to get from him. Desmond Ridder, he seems like a nice kid, but I don't believe. Do you?
No, not
and
at
then,
all.
Poor Bryce Young, man, he just looks completely overwhelmed and lost so far in 2 games with the Panthers. Their offensive line is horrible. They don't have really good receivers. So they don't look good at all. So yeah, that is a division that
it's gettable. It's gettable for
absolutely gettable.
It's gettable for Baker, and Baker has gotten the Browns to the playoffs. Kevin, if he can get the Browns to the playoffs, he can get the Bucks to the playoffs.
Correct. Look, Tampa has a pretty good roster overall, right? They've got some good players on defense. You just got to win that division. And again, we're not talking about the AFC North here.
No.
Right? That's not the AFC West a few years
real
ago.
Quick, though, on the AFC North, what is happening with Cincinnati? I know that Joe Burrow didn't play for any of our teams, but my goodness, he just got paid and he has forgotten how to play football.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a guy who didn't practice at all in the preseason. Remember, he got that injury during camp, and he did not play or really practice the entire preseason. I don't care about playing in preseason.
Whatever, dude. You got paid to be the best quarterback in the league. Come on,
I understand, but if you don't play, if you don't practice at all, you can't just go out in the game and play. So it doesn't look right, and they got to get it right. I'm curious, is he actually healthy? Because he just does not look right. He was a little bit better in the second half, but he doesn't look right. The offense doesn't look right because they've got some stud receivers, and they got to get those. He's got to get those guys the ball.
One more quick hit on Sooners in the NFL. You're probably honestly, correct me if I'm wrong, one of your favorite Sooners, CeeDee Lamb. How good does he look for the Cowboys right now?
Man, he's a stud, man. It's just crazy for a receiver who's 190 pounds, just how tough he is and how strong he is after the catch. That's always been his greatest strength, is what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch.
If Dak Prescott just doesn't lose games, they could make a very deep run.
Correct, because that defense, man, I mean, I'm having flashbacks of the 93 Cowboys with that defense. It's unreal. Michael Parsons, this guy is just an absolute alien out there.
He's unblockable, man. Now he is unblockable. So
we talked about this on the last episode, just the fact that Dan Quinn is just moving him. You don't know where he's coming from. He's blitzing off the edge. He's blitzing up the middle, A-gap, B-gap, everywhere.
So y'all got zero, right? Is that Anthony Hill Jr.? That's y'all's
Anthony Hill Jr. Yeah.
And is he a true freshman?
He's a true freshman.
And we've got Adibare. It is going to be so much fun to watch those two players because you're seeing more and more creativity with how to get those edge players in space, right? How to create mismatches for them to be able to rush the quarterback and get into the backfield. And going into the SEC with a year for Atabari and a year for Anthony Hill Jr., we are going to have two of the best rush ends in the SEC on day one.
Correct. Yeah. And then think about that too. When you have guys like Stone and all these other guys you're bringing in who are tying up blockers and being able to penetrate from the interior, and then with him coming off the edge, it's going to give offensive coordinators a lot to think about, man. A lot to have to prepare for.
I love it, dude. Hey, man, this is a great week of football. Enjoy it.